When I was younger, I carried many dreams inside my heart. I wished for a peaceful home, a beautiful car, and a family that would love me. But life did not go the way I hoped. I worked long hours every day, yet everything I had was small. A small job and a small room. I kept telling myself that one day things would change, but days turned into years, and I was still in the same place. My friends moved forward in life. They got married, bought homes, and had children. I watched their happiness from a distance. I smiled when I met them, but inside I felt empty, like I was standing still while the world moved past me. One morning, I looked at myself in the mirror. My hair had started to turn gray, and there were new lines on my face. I whispered to myself, "Did I wait too long? Is it already too late for me?" A heavy feeling filled my chest. I wanted a family. I wanted someone who would come home to me. I wanted to feel loved. But I was alone. I kept living like this, working, returning home, sleeping, and repeating the same cycle again and again. I convinced myself that this was my life now. But deep down, a small part of me still hoped for more. I wanted change, but I did not know where to begin. And I was afraid. Afraid to try, afraid to fail, afraid to hope again. Then one day, something in my life quietly changed. I met someone. She wasn't loud or flashy. She was calm, gentle, and kind. We started talking a little each day. Nothing special at first, just small conversations. But those small moments began to feel important. She listened when I spoke. She laughed at my jokes. She made me feel seen. Like me, she had spent many years alone. She also had dreams she had kept buried inside her heart. We shared our stories slowly, piece by piece. I found comfort in her words, and for the first time in a long while, I felt understood. One evening, while we were walking together, I asked her quietly, "Do you think it's too late for people like us?" She looked at me with a soft smile and said, "It is only too late when you stop believing. If your heart is still alive, your future is still alive too." Those simple words stayed with me. They became a small light inside my darkness. Not bright, but enough to guide me forward. We began spending more time together. We walked in the park, watched the sky change colors at sunset, and spoke about the dreams we once had but were too afraid to chase. Every moment with her felt gentle and new, like a door opening slowly after being closed for many years. I realized something important. I was not young anymore, but I was also not finished. There was still time. There was still hope. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to believe that my life could become different. As more days passed, I started to look at my life differently. I no longer focused only on what I had lost. I began to notice what I still had: time, strength, and a chance to begin again. One evening, we sat by the river. The sky was turning orange and gold as the sun slowly went down. She turned to me and asked gently, "What do you truly want from life?" For a moment, I could not answer. I had spent so many years just working and surviving that I had forgotten how to dream. No one had asked me about my heart in a very long time. After a long silence, I finally spoke. "I want a home. I want a family. I want a life that feels warm. A life that feels like mine." She listened carefully and smiled softly. "Then take a step toward it," she said. "You don't need to wait for the perfect time. Just start." That night, her words echoed in my mind again and again. Just start. I lay in bed thinking about everything. All the years I had wasted waiting for a better moment, a better chance, a better version of myself. I always believed I needed more time, more money, more luck, but maybe I only needed courage. Maybe happiness doesn't come from waiting. Maybe it comes from moving. Right there, in the silence of my small room, I made a promise to myself. I will not wait anymore. I will begin, even if it is slow, even if it is small. For the first time in a very long time, I felt a spark of hope. The next morning, I woke up with a feeling I had not felt in years: motivation. The sky looked a little clearer, and the air felt a little lighter. Nothing in my life had changed yet, but inside me, something was different. I told myself, I will move forward, even if it's one small step at a time. I began with little changes. I woke up earlier. I tried to stay positive. I reminded myself that my life was not over. It was simply waiting for me to begin again. At work, I felt more focused than before. I smiled more, spoke more, and carried myself with confidence I had almost forgotten I still had. One of my coworkers even looked at me and said, "You look happier these days." I didn't explain much. I just smiled and replied softly, "I feel different." And it was true, the world had not changed, but my heart had. After work each evening, I continued to meet her at the park. We sat under the same old tree and talked about our day. The routine felt peaceful, like something I could hold on to, a reminder that I was not alone anymore. She believed in me, and because she believed in me, I started to believe in myself. Slowly, I began to make a plan. Maybe I could find a better job. Maybe I could save a little more money. Maybe, step by step, I could build the life I once thought I had lost. For the first time in a long time, my future did not feel like an empty space. It felt like a door that was finally opening. The next day, I sat down with a notebook and wrote my first real goals in years. They were simple goals, nothing big or impossible, but they were mine. Wake up earlier. Save a little each month. Look for better opportunities. Take one step at a time. I didn't rush. I didn't pressure myself. I just began. Every evening, when we met in the park, she asked me gently about my progress. She never pushed me. She never hurried me. She simply reminded me that forward is still forward, even if the steps are small. One evening she asked, "What will be your very first step?" I thought about it for a moment and said, "I think I should start by finding a better job, something that will help me grow." She nodded with a warm smile. "That's a good start," she said. "But remember, the most important step is to believe you deserve a better life." Her words touched me more than she knew. For so many years, I had lived thinking that happiness belonged to other people. People who were luckier, stronger, smarter, not me. But now I was beginning to understand. Happiness is not given, it is built. That night, I sat in my small room again, but this time I didn't feel trapped. I looked around and felt something new, a quiet confidence. I wasn't where I wanted to be yet, but for the first time in a long time, I was on the way. I wasn't too old. I wasn't too late. I was simply beginning. The next morning, I began taking real action. I updated my old resume, searched for new job openings, and practiced how I would speak in an interview. Every step was small, but every step made me feel stronger. At first, I was nervous. I had been in the same routine for so many years that change felt unfamiliar. But I reminded myself of her words. Just start. Days passed and I kept trying. I woke up early, stayed focused, and sent out applications. Even when I felt unsure, I didn't stop. Every evening, I met her at the park and told her about my day. She listened with patience and encouragement. When doubt touched my mind, she reminded me, "Good things take time. Keep going." Slowly, hope became part of my daily life. I didn't feel stuck anymore. I felt like I was moving forward. One afternoon, I finally got a call. A company wanted to interview me for a better position. My hands were shaking when I ended the call. Nervous, excited, frightened, and hopeful all at once. I told her later that evening, and her eyes lit up. "I'm proud of you," she said softly. "You see, the moment you decided to try, your life started to open." Her faith in me became like fuel, quiet, but powerful. I spent the next few days preparing carefully. I practiced my answers, I studied the company, and I kept telling myself, even if I fail, I am still further than before. For the first time, I didn't feel like someone life had left behind. I felt like someone who was finally catching up with his own future. The day of the interview finally arrived. I put on my best clothes, took a deep breath, and walked into the building with quiet courage in my heart. I was nervous, but I reminded myself that this moment was already a victory, because I was no longer standing still. The interview was not easy. They asked many questions, some I expected and some I did not. But I stayed calm, spoke honestly, and tried my best to show who I really was, not just what I had done. When I walked out of the office, I felt proud of myself. Even if I didn't get the job, I had already taken a step forward, a step I once believed I was too late to take. A few days later, my phone rang. I answered with a shaking voice. "We would like to offer you the position." For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just sat there in silence, letting the words sink in. I had done it. My life had started to change, because I finally chose to change it. That evening, I met her in the park like always. When I told her the news, she smiled brightly and hugged me. "I knew you could do it," she whispered. That night, when I lay in bed, I was not the same person I had been months ago. I had a new job, a new beginning, and a new belief in myself. I was no longer just surviving. I was finally living. My first days at the new job were exciting, but also overwhelming. Everything was different. The office was bigger, the work was more serious, and the people around me were more experienced. At times I felt small again, like I did not belong. But every time doubt appeared, I reminded myself, I earned this. I worked for this. I am not here by accident. The first week was difficult. I made mistakes. I struggled to keep up. Some nights I stayed late just to learn more. There were moments when I felt tired, and moments when I wondered if I could really handle it. But every evening, when I met her at the park, she listened to me without judgment. She looked at me with understanding and said, "Every beginning feels heavy, but look at how far you have come already." Her words gave me strength, and the next morning I showed up again, ready to try. Slowly, things began to change. I learned faster. I made fewer mistakes. People at work started noticing my effort instead of my fear. One afternoon, my boss called me to his office. For a moment I worried I had done something wrong. But instead, he looked at me and said, "You're doing well. Keep going." Those words felt like a warm light inside me. For the first time in a long time, I felt proud not just of what I achieved, but of who I was becoming. I wasn't just working anymore. I was growing. With my new job, I finally had the chance to save more than before. I began planning my future carefully, not just wishing for it. I wanted a home of my own, a place where I could feel safe and settled, a place that belonged to me. At first, the goal looked far away. Houses were expensive, and I didn't have much saved yet. For a moment, the old fear returned, the fear that maybe I was still too late. But then I remembered her voice in my mind, step by step. So I continued saving a little every month. I controlled my spending. I stayed focused. One evening, as we walked through the park together, she asked me gently, "What comes next for you?" I looked ahead toward the path in front of us and said quietly, "I want to buy a home, something small but mine." She smiled, not with surprise, but with certainty. "You will," she said, "because you are no longer waiting, you are moving." Her faith in me made my own belief stronger. I was no longer a man watching life from the outside. I was someone building a life from the inside. Months passed, and I kept moving forward. My savings slowly grew. My confidence continued to grow with it. At work, I began to take on more responsibilities. Little by little, I felt myself changing, not just my situation but my identity. I wasn't the man who had been left behind anymore. I was a man who had started again. And for the first time in many years, I felt truly capable. Time continued to pass, and with each month I felt myself becoming stronger. Not only in my work, but in my heart. I was finally building something real for myself. Then one afternoon, something unexpected happened. My boss called me into his office again. For a moment, I wondered if I had made a mistake. But instead, he looked at me with a confident smile. "We have a new position opening," he said. "More responsibility, better pay, and I believe you are ready for it." My heart beat faster. A promotion? Not long ago, I was afraid to even apply for a better job. Now I was being offered one. I accepted the position, feeling both grateful and proud. It wasn't luck. It was proof that effort can change a life, step by step. That evening, when I told her the news, her face lit up with happiness. "See," she said softly, "it was never too late. Your life didn't change by chance. It changed because you decided to begin." She was right. For so many years, I believed that time had passed me by, but now I finally understood. It is never time that leaves us behind. It is fear. And once I stopped letting fear guide my life, the doors that once seemed closed began to open. That night, I sat in my room and looked at my savings again. For the first time, owning a home didn't feel like a distant dream. It felt like something within reach. I wasn't just dreaming anymore. I was becoming the person who could turn that dream into reality. Months continued to pass, and my life kept moving forward. The new position at work was challenging, but I was no longer afraid of challenges. I welcomed them. Every day I learned something new. Every week I grew a little more confident. My salary was better, my skills were improving, and for the first time in my life, my future didn't feel far. It felt close, like I could almost touch it. One evening, as always, we sat together in the park watching the sunset. She looked at me and asked softly, "Do you ever think about the past now?" I paused for a moment before answering. "Sometimes," I said, "but not the way I used to." Before, I looked back with regret. Now, I look back just to see how far I have come. She smiled, and I could see pride in her eyes. Pride not just in what I had done, but in what I had become. After months of saving, I finally had enough to start searching for a home. The moment felt unreal. For years, I had only imagined it. Now, I was actually doing it. I visited different houses. Some were too small, some too expensive, some didn't feel right. But I didn't get discouraged. I kept searching, telling myself that one day, the right one would appear. Because now, I understood something deep. Dreams don't arrive all at once. They arrive step by step, the same way hope returns, quietly, patiently, slowly. And I was no longer standing still. I was on my way. Then one day I found it, a small house with a quiet garden in front. Simple but warm, peaceful but full of life. The moment I stood outside its door, something inside me whispered, "This feels like home." It wasn't large or fancy, but it was exactly what I had always pictured in my heart. A place where mornings would feel gentle and evenings would feel safe. I imagined planting flowers, drinking tea on the porch, and waking up every day with a sense of belonging. I took a slow breath and made the decision. I bought the house. The day I held the keys in my hand, I didn't just feel like I owned a building. I felt like I had finally taken ownership of my life. It wasn't luck and it wasn't a gift. It was years of quiet hope and the courage to finally begin. That same evening, I invited her to see it. She walked through the rooms with a soft smile, her eyes shining. "It's beautiful," she said. "You did it." I looked around at the empty walls and silent rooms, and for the first time, those empty spaces didn't feel lonely. They felt full of possibility. Then I looked at her, the person who had walked beside me through every small step, every doubt, and every beginning, and I realized something important. This wasn't just a house. This was the start of a new chapter, a second chance, a place where life could finally bloom. As we stood together in the living room, surrounded by quiet walls and soft evening light, I realized something even deeper. My journey was never just about finding a house. It was about finding a place in the world again. I looked at her, the person who had stayed beside me through every step, and my heart felt full in a way I had not known for many years. She wasn't just part of the story. She had become the reason I kept moving forward. I took a slow breath and said gently, "This house feels complete when you are in it." She turned toward me, surprised but smiling, and I continued, "I don't want this to be only my home. I want it to be our home. Will you share this life with me?" For a moment she didn't speak. Her eyes softened, and I could see emotion in them. Then she smiled, warm and full of light, and said, "Yes, I will." Those words filled the room more than any furniture ever could. In that instant, I understood something clearly. I had not just built a future. I had built a new beginning. Years ago, I believed my chance for happiness had disappeared. I believed I was too late, too far behind, too old to start again. But I was wrong. All along, happiness was never gone. It was simply waiting for me to choose it. From that day forward, my life did not feel like a story of waiting anymore. It felt like a story of becoming. I learned that time is not an enemy. Life does not close its doors just because we are older. Dreams do not expire, they simply wait for courage. I once believed I had missed my chance, but the truth was, I had never started. The moment I decided to begin, everything changed. I found a better job. I built a future. I found love. I found home. Not because I was lucky, but because I finally chose to move instead of stand still. And now, when I look back at the years I thought were lost, I don't feel regret anymore. I feel gratitude. Those years taught me patience. They taught me strength. They prepared me for a beginning that arrived later, but arrived beautifully. Today I wake up with hope. Today, I know that life is still full of unopened doors, because it is never too late. Not for love, not for growth, not for change, not for happiness. And if there is one lesson my journey has taught me, it is this. It is never too late to begin again.